Hello, this is graduate project for 5369. This is the phase 1 project proposal. I am IHM Shamsu Zoha. Our project is titled Finding Editorial and Reporting Biases Present in News Article by Text Mining. So what do we want to do? First, some backgrounds. We know that print media, meaning newspaper, online news article, text media, is the single most important source of journalism. This is the original journalistic outlet. Most other forms of media, meaning TV, news reporting, audio, radio news reporting, these forms of media very often depend on print medias like newspapers for their source. They very often cite newspaper articles, newspaper reporting for their own reporting. So as a result, newspaper, print media is very important part of our society, because for a democratic society, media, journalism, uh, journalism journalism does has a very important role in a democratic society. It informs the population. It galvanizes the population towards their views. So, for in any kind of media, biases are present. This is well known, and this can be said. This can be said to be a universal truth, because no media, no presentation, no fact is without bias. These biases are also present in print media, and these biases can show themselves in various ways. For this project, we are mostly interested in one particular expression of the bias, that is uses of different adjectives for similar situation, but for different actors. What do I mean by that? Okay. First, I think we should talk about biases. What do we mean by biases? We expect our media to be fair, objective, and bias-free, but that is simply not possible. Based on the cultural, political, economic pressures and inclinations, media reports different stories in different ways. How can we spot these biases, and how these biases show themselves? These biases show themselves on how the story, the reporting is framed. These biases show themselves by the use of active and passive voice. I think this point can be better explained. Like, if the active voice is used, then it implies somebody is doing something. The action has an actor who is doing something. But if the media intends on hiding or protecting the actor and only report on the action, they use passive voice. One more outlet of this bias is assume guilt or innocence. How they frame the story or write their reporting or tell and represent their stories can have an assumption of innocence or assumption of guilt based on their premises. Also, using dehumanizing language to justify some action done upon somebody, or using humanizing language to excuse the actions of somebody. This is what I mean by using humanizing and dehumanizing languages. Example is this one. I think what I said thus far is quite abstract, but this example it will bring it down to earth. Based on the race of the arrested and the guilty person who is facing a trial, not the guilty, the accused person facing a trial, we can see that media has a bias toward white defendants rather than black defendants. In this study by Equal Justice Initiative, it is seen that media often reports on this type of stories by showing a black defendant in mugshot in 45% in the cases and showing a white defendant in mugshot in 9% of the cases. In jumpsuit, it's 8% of the black defendants, and in suits, 13% in white defendants and 6% black defendants. The bias here is very clear what is done and why it is doing it. Showing some defendants in clean-cut suits, it humanizes them, it shows them in a presentable manner. And showing some defendants in jumpsuit and mugshot, it dehumanizes them, it stigmatizes them that they're guilty, they're prisoners, they're accused. This very subtle and simple thing is enough to color the audience's view towards the defendant. And this is the main target of our project. We want to do the same thing, but on writing. On this graph by Equal Justice Initiative, we can see that for white defendant, some words are more often than used than others, and for black defendants, some words are more often used than others. If you see clearly, you can see that the words most commonly used for white defendants are humanizing languages like father, son, man. And for black defendants, the common words used are arrested, accused, murder, robbery, and kidnapping. The difference is very clear. On one side, humanizing language is used to show them in a good light, and on the other side, opposite, dehumanizing languages are used more often to stigmatize the audience's view. We want to do the same thing in our project. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to gather news articles from internet, printed news article. We want to gather those articles and we want to process them to find this type of patterns, this type of biases. So for web, for gathering these articles from internet, we will use web scraping. We we are thinking about using Beautiful Soup. This is a tool for Python. It can be used to gather various materials from internet, from websites, to collect them. After collecting the articles, we will use some techniques called text mining. We will use regular expression. We will use regular expression to differentiate words and adjectives used. We will use different classifiers like random forest to classify those words in different categories. And we will also use different toolkits like natural language toolkit that uses natural language processing to further process those articles. And we can find various patterns like those in those articles to show the biases or certain ideological slant in the reporting. So what we are trying to achieve, like I said earlier, we are trying to show the patterns of biases in print media, bias in the languages they use, the difference of language used in similar situation but in different contexts based on who are the actors involved. And we are trying to provide a simple and easy workflow to automate this process. That is our objective. Thank you. This is the end of the presentation.